Needle spiking has been making headlines around the world. It's when someone's injected with a drug without their consent.
Thousands of cases have been recorded in the UK, and now young Australians are also reporting needle spiking here. Triple J's Hack is investigating, and host Dave Marchese joins us now from Sydney. Dave, good morning. This story I find so incredibly disturbing. How common is needle spiking?
Yeah, it's horrifying, and the simple answer is we don't know, because while a lot of people are reporting these incidents to their mates or people they know, they're not necessarily going to authorities, right? And we know that it's a big issue overseas. Like in the UK, there were protests a couple of years ago after some needle spiking incidents at universities. There have been some scattered reporting of cases here in Australia, especially in regional communities. Like there were some cases reported in Newcastle, in Echuca as well, but we don't know how prevalent it is. We do know that in the UK, for instance, where a lot of the data is coming from in terms of needle spiking as opposed to drink spiking, they're saying, you know, more than 2,500 cases have been reported in the last couple of years. But there's a lot we don't know, and health authorities here in Australia say we're not even sure because the data is hard to come by. There's such a small amount of data whether people are actually being injected with drugs, if they are, what they're being injected with, but it is clear that people are being targeted with needles or pins, and it's certainly upsetting a lot of young people.
So they could just be at a bar and someone comes out and spikes them. Like, have you found Australians who've had it happen to them?
Yeah, we have. We spoke to quite a few young Australians. We spoke to one young person in Newcastle, and it happened to her on her first night out after she turned 18. Went out to a bar, a guy came up to her, touched her inappropriately, and then she felt something. Within half an hour she was passed out in a gutter despite only having a couple of drinks, and really struggled to get home. Luckily she had the support of her friends. When she went to police, she said they weren't really helpful at all. They didn't know what had happened or really believed that someone had injected her with something. But it wasn't until a few weeks later, when other incidents were reported at the same venue, that police contacted her and said they opened an investigation. We spoke to another couple of people, friends who went out for a night at a Sydney bar last November, a guy and a girl. Within an hour or so of arriving at this bar, they say something happened to them. All of a sudden, they'd lost control of their bodies, they were disoriented, they were passed out in the bathroom. Again, luckily they had some friends that got them home safely. One of those people was a guy called Ross, and he described not knowing what had happened to him until the friend he was with that night said the next morning, "Hey, I had to go to hospital. I found a puncture mark. You should check yourself." And he did, and he also found a puncture mark. And look, he didn't go to police because he said he was afraid they wouldn't believe him. He was confused himself. What he did say, though, was it had an enormous impact on his mental health. He still thinks about it all the time. Let's have a little listen to Ross.
I'm still a bit anxious when going out, because I remember we went to a festival probably a month or two after I got back from Sydney. And before that, I even went to the festival. I had a bit of an anxiety attack, panic attack, whichever one you want to call it. And that took me a bit to go out. Even at the festival, someone just touched my back and I felt like I'd been spiked, and just based off the pure fear that it might happen to me again. I still really don't go clubbing because I don't feel safe doing it. But yeah, it definitely affected my mental health when it comes to going out to events and just going out in general, really.
So Dave, what should people do if they think they've been spiked?
Well, look, if you're out at a venue, obviously let the bar staff, venue staff know. Get someone safe around you, a friend, someone close to you, but you also have to be careful, because the experts are telling us you're more likely to be spiked, or most likely to be spiked, by somebody you do know. So that's a bit of a concern as well, but also reporting this to medical authorities, but to the police as well, because as I said, this data, there's not a lot of it, and investigators need to know as much as they can.
Dave Marchese from Triple J's Hack program, thank you.